The arena was settling into a rhythm of comfortable predictability. You know, the feeling the main event was set. The champion was standing tall, holding a microphone, reciting lines that felt rehearsed 1,000 times before. The crowd in Chicago was buzzing, but it was a low, restless hum. They were waiting for the show to end. They were checking their phones. The energy was flat, a balloon slowly leaking air. The champion raised the belt, a symbol of dominance that had gone unchallenged for too long, and opened her mouth to speak one final declaration of superiority. Then, the world turned black. It wasn't a technical error, it was a weaponized silence. For 3 seconds, 18,000 people held their breath in the same syncopated rhythm. The darkness wasn't empty, it was heavy. It pressed down on the chest of every fan in the front row. Then, the sound hit. Not music, but a distorted, screeching static that tore through the PA system, a sound that hadn't been heard in years. The reaction wasn't a cheer. It was a primal, guttural roar that shook the camera lenses. Michael Cole's voice cracked through the feed, barely audible over the tsunami of human noise. Wait a minute, no, it can't be. The lights are out. Who is this? The champion in the ring dropped the act. Her eyes widened, shifting from arrogance to genuine, unscripted fear. She knew that sound. Everyone knew that sound. It was the auditory signal of a ghost coming back to haunt the living. The Titantron flickered to life, not with a highlight reel, but with a single, stark graphic. The name appeared. And in that moment, the hierarchy of the division didn't just shift. It shattered completely. The stage smoke billowed outward, thick and gray, obscuring the entrance ramp. The suspense was agonizing, stretched out like a rubber band ready to snap. When she finally stepped through the curtain, the noise level didn't go up, changed frequency. It became piercing. She didn't run. She didn't play to the crowd. She just stood there, silhouetted against the blinding white LEDs, soaking in the adoration and the shock. She looked different. The years away hadn't softened her. They had sharpened her edges. She walked with a terrifying calm, a predator entering a paddock of grazing sheep. Corey Graves was screaming into his headset, losing all composure. She's here. The exile is over. Do you understand what we are seeing? This changes everything. The camera tracked her boots, hitting the steel ramp-heavy, deliberate steps. There was no smiling, no high-fiving the fans on the barricade. This wasn't a reunion tour. This was a hostile takeover. As she climbed the steel steps, the commentary team stopped trying to call the action and started trying to process history. The atmosphere was thick with a specific type of electricity that only exists when reality breaks script. She paused on the apron, looking out at the sea of signs that had been hastily scribbled with her name just seconds ago. Inside the ring, the current champion retreated to the corner, clutching the title belt not like a prize, but like a shield. The returning queen stepped between the ropes, and the ring seemed to shrink. The air grew thinner. She didn't need pyrotechnics. Her presence was the explosion. She stood in the center of the canvas, closed her eyes, and let the deafening chant of her name wash over her like a baptism. The stare-down is an art form lost in modern wrestling, but she brought it back in seconds. No punches were thrown. No moves were executed. Just two women standing 5 feet apart, separated by a legacy of violence. The microphones were useless. The crowd was too loud for words. You could see the current champion trying to maintain her bravado, trying to stand tall, but her body language betrayed her. She was shrinking. She was realizing that for the last 2 years, she had been keeping the throne warm. The returning legend slowly tilted her head, a signature mannerism that sent a fresh wave of hysteria through the stands. She reached out, not to strike, but to brush a stray hair from her face. Exposing a scar from a battle fought years ago in this very ring, it was intimate and terrifying. The commentary team dropped their voices to a whisper, selling the gravity of the moment. "Look at the eyes," Cole whispered. "That isn't the look of someone happy to be back. That is the look of someone who feels they were owed something." She finally raised the microphone. The building fell silent instantly. The kind of obedience usually reserved for religious leaders. She didn't scream catchphrases. She spoke softly, forcing everyone to lean in. "Did you think I forgot?" she asked. For words. That was it. She dropped the mic. The thud echoed like a gavel strike. The psychological warfare was absolute. She turned her back on the champion, the ultimate sign of disrespect, and exited the ring. She didn't need to fight tonight. She had already won the war just by showing up and proving that the current era existed solely because she had allowed it to. When the cameras cut away, the chaos didn't stop. It migrated. The internet had already melted down. Twitter was a blur of caps lock and crying emojis. But the real story was happening behind the curtain. The gorilla position, the nerve center of the show, was in a state of controlled panic. Producers were scrapping scripts for the next 3 weeks. Writers were huddled in corners, frantically typing, realizing their long-term plans had just been incinerated by a single entrance. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was a morale check for the entire locker room. Young talent, who had spent the last year clawing for TV time, watched on monitors with a sinking feeling in their guts. They knew what this meant. The spotlight is a finite resource, and a massive shadow had just been cast over the division. There was jealousy, certainly, but it was masked by a terrifying amount of respect. In the hallways, the returning star walked past the roster. There were no hugs. The frantic energy of the production crew parted around her like water. She was in a zone of her own making. The camera caught a glimpse of her family waiting near the loading dock, a reminder that the human being behind the character had made sacrifices to be here. This wasn't just a paycheck. It was a disruption of life. The media scrum was already forming outside, reporters shouting questions about contracts and dream matches, but she ignored them all. The narrative wasn't theirs to write anymore. She had taken the pen back. The shock of the return was fading into the cold, hard reality of the consequences. The Queen was back, and heads were going to roll. Why do we love the return so much? It isn't just nostalgia. It's the disruption of order. We crave the moment when the established structure collapses. Tonight wasn't about a match or a championship belt. It was about the illusion of safety being stripped away. The fans left the arena exhausted, their voices hoarse, carrying that rare feeling of having witnessed a fracture in time. But here's the twist that no one in that arena realized while they were screaming her name. We assume she came back to save the division. We assume she came back to elevate the new generation, to pass the torch. To have that one final dream match, we were wrong. As she sat in her locker room, alone unwrapping the tape from her wrists, the camera lingered on her expression. It wasn't triumph. It was resentment. She didn't come back to reclaim her glory. She came back because she realized the industry had moved on without her, and she couldn't stand it. This wasn't a hero's journey. This was an ego trip disguised as a homecoming. The shocking return wasn't a gift to the fans. It was a punishment for the locker room that dared to forget her. The villain hadn't been defeated years ago. She was just biding her time. And now, the most dangerous thing in WWE isn't the woman holding the belt, it's the woman who realizes she no longer needs it to destroy everyone.